everyone, it's Melanie and welcome to video 2 for the quilting series. The last video we talked about fabric selection and I taught you how to cut your fabric. In this video I'm going to show you all about piecing your quilt top. So we're going to do our half square triangles, we're going to talk about 1/4 inch seam allowance, chain piecing, nesting our seams together, getting those perfect points. I'm going to give you some tips on how to keep all your fabric organized and also how to do your layout. So we're going to be doing a lot of information in this video. It's going to be jam-packed. You guys are going to find a lot of value in it. I'm really excited for you to see this video. First, I wanted to say a thank you to my sponsors. This video series is made possible by 3 sponsors. Clover, which has amazing quilting notions. They're actually sponsoring the giveaway for today's video. A ton of products, seam ripper, the wonder clips, some of my favorite pins, a bunch of stuff, so stay tuned to the end of the video for the details on that giveaway. Also, my Quilt Box, which is like a monthly subscription box, and what you get in the mail is valued at a higher retail price than what you paid for it, which is awesome. There's like notions and rulers and fabric and really fun stuff. If you can't quite make it to the store or wanting to expand your sewing room materials, it's a great resource. Also, Aurifil Thread, which is my personal favorite thread. They have high quality cotton thread. My machine loves it. It's low lint thread, so you don't have to clean your machine as often. It doesn't get all stuck in there, and they have beautiful colors. So be sure to check out the sponsors, and let's get started. I'm going to give you some information on piecing your quilt top. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to share with you is a few things that might be helpful for you while you're piecing your quilt top together. So a couple of notions, things that might be helpful. So the first thing that you might need is a 1/4 inch piecing foot for your sewing machine. This is not 100% necessary, especially if you have one of those metal plates with the measurements on there where you can see that 1/4 inch. But this does make it really handy to do an accurate 1/4 inch. You want to do a scant 1/4 inch, which is a slightly smaller 1/4 inch seam on your quilting. This is the foot for my Viking. My Juki, I don't use one because I can see my 1/4 inch line really well, but this might be something to invest in, or look and see if your machine came with one of these. The other thing you are going to need is a water erasable pen. It actually doesn't have to be water erasable because we're going to be cutting along the line that you make. So you're not going to see it. It's not going to show up anywhere. I happen to like this one by Clover. Just don't use the air erasable ones because if you have to step away from your quilt and come back to it later, you want your line to be there. The other thing you might want to have is a seam ripper. You want to have your piecing thread. So this will be the thread that kind of blends in the best with your fabric selection. Some good pins are nice when we're doing our half square triangles and we need to pin our pieces together. I like these flower head nice and long pins that Clover makes. The thing is, you want to have just like nice sharp pins. You don't want it to snag your fabric. So good pins are a good thing to have for this part. The other thing is these Clover wonder clips. These are just a great sewing notion to have. They're one of my favorite gadgets to have. It's not really a gadget, but it's one of my favorite things to have in my sewing room. When we stack up our fabric after we've done our layout and we're stacking it all up and taking it over to the sewing machine, I'm going to label them and then clip them together. So you're not going to be able to really pin through all those layers, but I just want it to stay exactly the orientation that I need to sew. Okay, and the last thing that I wanted to mention that will be good to have is a design wall. I do have a video on how to make one. It's really handy when you're doing your layout. All right, so now let's jump into making our half square triangles and making our layout. All right, everybody, so let's make our half square triangles. Now, when I mentioned before, high contrast fabric choices. So let's say, for example, we have this purple and I put some other fabrics here so that we could kind of have a little quiz on which ones we think would be better for high contrast. So this would not be a good choice. This is not high enough contrast. This fabric will blend in. So we don't want to use that one. This would be another one that is not a good choice because this is not in high enough contrast. Now this one would be a great option for the green fabric. Okay, so for this purple, this one would be okay, but it's not the best option. And so since we have a lot of other fabrics to choose from, we're going to eliminate this one as well. So let's say these would be good options for high contrast. You can see how that purple will really pop against those fabrics. Now let's make our half square triangles. So each one of these units is going to create 2 half square triangles. So what you're going to do is place your right sides together. These solids, generally, you can't tell the difference between the right side and the wrong side. There really isn't a difference. So we're just going to place that on here. Line up all of your corners. Use a ruler, any ruler that will get you a straight edge going all the way across. Lighten it up there so you can see it. I'm going to use this Clover erasable pen, water-soluble pen. There's a lot of different options for these. This line, you're actually going to be cutting along this line. So, you know, if you don't have one of these on hand, you can use a pencil or a pen as well. And then we're going to use some pins and pin this into place. Okay, now when you guys are doing this at home, do a bunch of these all at one time so that you can do this assembly line fashion, and that will make the piecing and all of this stuff go much faster. So now what we're going to do is, using this line as our guide, we are going to stitch 1/4 of an inch on one side and then 1/4 of an inch on the other side to create our 2 half square triangle units. I'm going a hair wider than my presser foot. I know that that is my scant 1/4 of an inch mark. So if you have a piecing quilting foot, that would be really helpful for this step so that you know where that 1/4 of an inch is. Okay, so let's show you again one more time. Here is our center line. Here's the stitch that we already make. So now we're going to make a 1/4 of an inch stitch to this side of that line. So here is how it should look. So now again, a good kind of time-saving option would be to sit at your sewing machine and do all of these at one time. Then bring them all over to your cutting table and trim them all. So what you want to do is just take a straight edge, any straight edge as long as it's long enough, and your rotary blade, just line up that line that we made with the water erasable pen. And there you go, that's our half square triangle unit. Now take these over to the ironing board. Now something that you might see in many quilting patterns is the term pressing to the dark. Now pressing to the dark means that you want this seam, when you have it pressed, to be laying on the dark side, so that if this was a very light fabric, you won't see that seam underneath the lighter fabric. So that's what pressing to the dark means. So basically you're going to lay your dark side up and then lift it up. So then see, now that seam is laying against the dark side of the fabric. So you always want to press to the dark. You can use a dry iron if you want to. You can use a steamy iron if you want to. I think that is mostly personal preference. I used to use a dry iron, but I found that a steamy iron is helpful when you have a lot of corners and seams matching together. Just make sure that you're using distilled water so that you don't get any like rusty water that comes out and gets on your fabric. So just be aware of that. So again, assembly line fashion, do all of this at one time, do all of your pressing, and then take all of your half square triangles, here's a whole bunch I already have done, and you want to trim them down. Okay, so to use one of these bigger rulers, line up your diagonal line, but you want to make sure that you're not going to trim off too much in this first cut. So make sure, see here's 4.5, 4.5. So make sure that you have your diagonal line lined up, but that you're not going to be trimming too much off. So we'll just start with this first cut. Okay. Now flip it over And now that we know this is a straight cut here, we can line up our diagonal line against the 4.5-inch marks and then make the rest of our cut. Don't worry about readjusting. Now there you go, there are your half square triangles. Now once you have all of these done, you want to do your layout. So I have my design board, I'm going to show you on that, but that's the next step. Alright guys, ta-da! Here is our flying geese portion. They're not traditional flying geese, but they sort of look that way with these triangles. Here are our half square triangles with our solids in here. You've already learned how to do your half square triangles. And then a design wall like this is really handy if you are a quilter or have a room where you could put this up. I had mine in the dining room before I had my own studio space. I have a video on this if you're interested. I'll have that linked below. So we have our 4.5-inch solid square here, and then our 2 half square triangles that make up this triangle shape. Now, the layout is going to be really handy to have a design wall like this, or the floor, or a dining room table, something where you can really play around with the placement of your prints and your half square triangles. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to piece together this whole part. We're going to do some chain piecing and some nesting your seams to get these perfect points here in the corners. So we're going to do that in this video, and then I will kind of skip ahead and show you the entire quilt top finished. You'll be able to use these same principles to finish your entire quilt top. Alright, so really quick, running through the numbers just so that you can kind of compare this to what you have cut. We need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half square triangles. So that would be 6. This would be 12. Now, one half square triangle, like one unit, creates 2 half square triangles, right? So that would be 6 green half square triangles that we need. And then the same for the purple. You're going to want an additional 10 to 12 half square triangle units, which then would create 20 to 25, 20 to 24 for the entire quilt. So just keep that in mind when you're cutting and creating your half square triangles. So once you have your layout done, I'm going to show you how we are going to begin piecing this guy. So the first thing that I do when I have my layout is take a photo. So once you have your layout complete, take a photo, because if a big gust of wind or a child or an animal comes in and messes up your layout, you're going to be really disappointed and have to redo it. So take a photo so that you know exactly how it should be looking. So the first thing that I'm going to do is make stacks, and then I'll be able to take it over to my sewing machine and kind of do it all assembly line fashion. It'll be a little bit faster that way. So you basically take this second column, flipping it right side onto this first column, and then making a stack so that the top 2 pieces were from the top of your layout. Okay, so here's my little note, column 1 and 2, because it's the first and the second column in our layout, and then I have used my clover clips to make sure that they're all nice and stacked together so I can go and place it over at the sewing machine. So you want to take your clips off, and then take your pieces. Let me zoom out just a little bit. I'll get some close-ups too. Here's the side we want to sew down. Line everything up and then sew down. And I'm going to show you, we're going to chain piece. So when you get to the end, do not cut your threads. So chain piecing is basically a faster way to do it. It's a little bit more efficient. You're not trimming your threads and then re-threading at the beginning. So you just continue a few stitches. Get your next piece. That way all the pieces stay together as well, so that you don't have anything get out of order. Okay, that was our last piece, so let's trim the threads now. And then we've got, they're all connected. So that's called chain piecing. So then what I do is just keeping track of the order. So this was the last one that we did, so this one needs to be on the bottom. So now here is my stack. I'm going to go ahead and put my label back on here. And then I'm going to use these really handy clover clips and clip it back together again. And if anything fell on the floor or you lost your layout, then you have your picture to fall back on so that you know exactly how the stack should look. Now you know how to chain piece and you know your 1/4 inch seam allowance, so you can go ahead and finish up sewing your stacks, and then I will fill you in on the next step. Okay, so now we have our 4 stacks sewn. We did our chain piecing and they're sewn here on the right side. Now what I'm going to do is take the top pieces from each of the stacks and create our first row. So now here are the top pieces from each of those stacks, and then we can open them up and then sew them together. We'll open up the first 2, place them right sides together, and then we'll sew down that one. We'll do the same with this one. So now we have our last stitch here. So here we have row 1. You can always double check with your picture to make sure that these are all in the right order. Now you can set this aside for now. If you want to label this one row 1, you can. And of course, if you have a different way that you can organize this in your brain in order to accomplish the same goal, feel free to do it differently than I do. I'm just showing you how I have come up with the plan to do it so that I don't get confused. But feel free to modify this if a different way makes more sense to you. Okay, now we're going to talk about nesting our seams together. So we have row 1 up here and we have row 2 here. So what we're going to want to do is, we're here at the ironing board, we are going to press all of our seams going, it doesn't matter which way, but let's say this way. So all of our seams are going to be going this way, all of these seams are going to be going that way. Alright, so when we press it, we're going to make all the seams go the same direction. And let the iron do the work for you. You don't want to be rubbing the iron back and forth on the fabric because it could cause some distortion. You can see all of our seams are pressed going the same direction, This is row 1. So now row 2, all of the seams need to lay the opposite direction. So now, here's where the magic happens. So we have row 2, we have row 1. We're going to place them right sides together. And now because the seams are going opposite directions, you're going to be able to lock these into place. Okay, so we're going to lock the seam into place and pin. I'm going to pin just because when you're first learning as a beginner, pinning is helpful. Once you get a little bit better, or for any of my more experienced quilters, you won't need to pin. See how these will just sort of lock into place because of the way we did the ironing. So continue pinning all the way down if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. We're going to sew 1/4 inch all the way down, and then I'm going to show you how well this works with getting our seams matched up. Okay, now we're going to sew down using our 1/4 inch seam allowance again. I'm going to show you how you can use your fingers to lock these seams together without pins for the rest of this row. I feel with my finger and make sure it's all nice and in place. Then I put my fingers on the seam and hold them there while I sew. In some ways I feel like that gives you a better result than pins, but it takes a little finesse and a little experience, so if you want to use pins, that's fine. This is where you will be able to tell how accurate you did your cutting. If you're having a hard time doing this, you probably had a harder time with your cutting. So if not all of your points match up, don't worry, your quilt will still look beautiful. Now when you're pressing, because we have some seams here that are a little bit bulky, I'm going to recommend that you press these seams open. And pressing them open means that you kind of open up this seam and press it. That will just help everything to lay a bit flatter. So you can see here what a nice job it does by nesting those seams together. Alright, here is the finished quilt top. I wanted to make sure that this was in the video so you could see the entire quilt top finished. I will have full photos over on my blog, melaniekaham.com, so that you can see the whole thing together. It's a little bit hard to get in the frame of the camera in this orientation, so that you can kind of see how I did it. Feel free to make it your own. If you don't want to add solids and half square triangles, don't add it. I mean, I really want you guys to interpret this project and make it something that you like. Also, don't be intimidated by the size. I know it's a good size quilt. A twin size quilt is a good size quilt, but it's a very simple construction and it will take a little bit of time, but really enjoy the process. I just love the quiet. I usually sew at night when my kids are in bed and I listen to some music or a podcast, and I have, some tea, and it's just a really nice, relaxing process for me. So I really want you to enjoy this process. So here is the whole quilt top. Alright everyone, you guys want to win some Clover goodies. These are the patchwork pins by Clover. We've got the flower head pins. We've got the seam ripper, a whole box of Wonder clips. We've also got a water erasable pen. We've got the air erasable pen. We've got some quilting needles. And so all of this is going to be given away over on my Instagram page. You can find me at Instagram at MelanieKHam. I will have the link down below in the description box. And I will open this giveaway up to international. I'm going to be shipping these out personally, so that's not too much to ship out, so I can do that internationally. That's no problem. So all the details will be down below. I will have this run for 1 week, so I'll be picking a winner next Friday when video 3 comes out. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it was helpful for you. Please leave me any questions or comments below. Please share this video with your crafty friends. Sharing and subscribing, commenting, giving a thumbs up, all that stuff is a really great way to help support this channel. The more people that hear about it, the more people are aware of my videos and aware of how much they can learn from these, and so that is really appreciated. Also, I want to follow along with you guys as you're working on your quilts if you're following along with me, so you can hashtag Mel's Quilting Series on social media. That way I can check in with you guys and see how that's going. So I have been loving live video. Facebook just launched a live video, a way to do live video on the like page, and I've also been on Periscope. I'm going to be setting up some live video Q&A, so you can check back on my Facebook page. That's where I'll be announcing some of the times and things like that. So if you're having any trouble or you want to be able to ask me specific questions and hear my response, or maybe you want me to show you something, that would be a really great way. I'll be doing that probably in the next week. We'll have a time scheduled, and then you know, once the quilting series gets a little further along, we'll do the same thing. All right, so this was video 2 for piecing your quilt top. The next video, we're going to be doing the basting and making the back of your quilt. I'm going to show you how that's going to work and basting it all together. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.